Hey guys, tonight you find yourself trudging toward a walled medieval town as dusk lowers like a wool blanket over the fields. Cold stone waits ahead, damp straw clings to the roadside ditches, and smoke from evening hearths hangs under the rafters of the sky. Your boots carry half the road with them in the form of mud, which is generous of the road, though not especially practical. Beyond the gate, a bell sounds from somewhere inside the town, slow and hollow, while river mist crawls along the outer ditch and a horse breathes white clouds into the winter air. Torchlight trembles on the gatehouse timbers. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience, mostly by not existing. You pull your cloak closer and feel the honest truth of it. You probably would not last a week out here without help, luck, and bread hard enough to threaten your teeth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle in, tell us where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You come on slowly beneath the last stripe of daylight, following the ruts of a cart track where puddles hold a little dull silver from the sky. The town wall rises before you, not grand in the way songs make walls grand, but stubborn, patched, weather-scarred, and very sure of itself. Its stones are dark with old rain. Moss grows between them like green thread in a torn sleeve. Above the gate, two watchmen lean with the weary patience of men who have spent too many evenings asking honest travellers dishonest questions. One scratches his beard, the other warms his fingers around a horn cup, from which rises the sour scent of thin ale. At your side, a small brown dog has been following you since the last wayside shrine, where someone tied a strip of cloth to a thorn bush for St. Giles, patron of beggars and those who limp. No one can quite agree whether the dog belongs to a charcoal burner, a widow, or itself. It keeps a respectful distance, as if it has learned that human beings are useful mainly when they drop food. Its paws make soft ticks on the frozen mud. The gate is still open, though only just. A cart loaded with bundled reeds waits ahead of you, its left wheel cracked and bound with a rope, groaning like an old priest asked to climb stairs. The carter argues quietly over the evening toll, holding up 2 fingers, then 1, then sighing in the universal language of a man being charged more than he hoped. The gatekeeper lifts a lantern and peers at you as you approach. His face is folded by weather, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Late on the road," he says. You nod, because this is safer than explaining every miserable mile. He asks your business. You tell him you seek a bed, a fire, perhaps a bowl of pottage if the town is feeling merciful. He points you toward the inn by the horse trough and waves you through with the cart, the dog slipping in after you as though it has paid a toll in dreams. Inside the gate, the town closes around you at once. The smell changes. Outside there was wet earth, frost, distant wood smoke. Inside there is everything at once: dung, onions, tallow, old rushes, damp wool, horse sweat, cabbage water, baking bread, and the faint sweetness of beeswax from some wealthier doorway. Houses lean over the narrow street, their upper stories nearly touching, as though sharing gossip above your head. Windows are shuttered. Somewhere a woman laughs. Somewhere a baby cries. Somewhere a cooper hammers one last hoop onto a barrel, because peace is apparently illegal before supper. You step around a heap of sweepings and pass a trough where ice has formed along the edges. A stable yard opens beside the inn, and there you first see the boy by the gate, though he is not really by the gate now. He stands beside a restless grey mare, one hand laid flat against her neck, his body very still. He is perhaps 16 or 17, narrow-shouldered, with straw-coloured hair cut unevenly around his ears. His tunic is patched at the elbows. A strip of red thread is tied around his wrist, not as decoration, you think, but as something rubbed and turned by habit. He does not look at the men unloading the cart. He does not look at you. He watches the mare's ear, the tiny flick of it, the shiver in the skin near her jaw. A stableman shouts for him to fetch a bucket. The boy flinches before the word is finished, not with fear exactly, but as though the sound has struck too close to his bones. Then he moves quickly, almost too quickly, to the well. He counts his steps under his breath. You only catch the shape of it 1, 2, 3, 4, then again 1, 2, 3, 4. At the well rope. He wraps his fingers in the same order each time. Thumb, forefinger, pull. Thumb, forefinger, pull. The bucket rises dripping and not a drop seems wasted. The stableman notices you noticing and gives a half shrug. Tom's a strange one, he mutters, not cruelly, though not gently either. Here's a mouse under the hay, remembers every shoe on every horse, but ask him a plain question, and he stands like a post. The boy returns with the bucket and sets it before the mare. He does not speak, yet the animal lowers her head at once. Her breath ruffles the water. You see then that the mare has a stone lodged in one shoe, nearly hidden by mud. The boy crouches, taps twice on the hoof, waits, then lifts it with such care that even the impatient stableman stops complaining. With a small iron pick, he eases the stone free. He places it on the ground beside him, not tossed away, but set down carefully, as if even a stone deserves a proper place after a hard day's work. Some swear that a person like him has one foot in another realm. Some call it moon-touched, some call it fairy-marked. Others say he was frightened in the cradle by thunder, or that his mother looked too long upon running water before he was born. Those who tell such tales never fully agree, but they tell them anyway, because people often prefer a poor explanation to a quiet mystery. You stand under the inn eaves while the evening bell rings again, its sound rolling over the roofs and slipping into every yard. The boy covers one ear with his shoulder, just for a breath, then carries on brushing the mare with short, even strokes. 7 strokes along the neck, 7 along the shoulder, 7 down the flank. When another groom laughs and asks if he means to polish the beast into a saint's relic, Tom does not answer. Yet the mare stands calmer beneath his hand than she has all evening. The inn door opens and warmth spills out in a gold rectangle. Inside, you glimpse a low room with soot-black rafters, benches worn smooth by generations of tired backs, and rushes scattered across the floor to soften the stone and absorb whatever the day has dragged in. A woman with flour on her sleeves calls for more trenchers. Someone complains that the ale is weak. Someone else says weak ale is safer than strong water, which is piece of wisdom repeated so often it hardly matters whether it is always true. A pilgrim near the hearth turns a lead badge between his fingers, the little stamped image of a saint glinting in the firelight. You should go inside. Your hands ache with cold. Your stomach has begun to think wistfully about pottage, even the kind with more turnip than hope, but you linger a moment longer, watching the stable yard settle into its evening rhythm. The broken cartwheel is propped against the wall. The dog curls beneath it as though choosing a rented chamber. The gate behind you groans shut at last. Bar lowered, iron key turned. Outside is the road and the dark. Inside is noise, smoke, shelter, judgment, kindness, and all the ordinary confusion of human company. Tom leads the mare into a stall and checks the latch 3 times. Not quickly, not anxiously, perhaps carefully. The first check is with his eyes, the second with his fingers, the third with a small tug of the wrist. Only then does his breath settle. You recognize something in that motion, though you may not have words for it here, in this age of charms and relics and whispered causes. You see a mind making a bridge across uncertainty, plank by plank, latch by latch, number by number. A woman from the inn steps out with a heel of coarse bread and passes it to him without making a show of it. "For the clever hands," she says. He takes it, still not looking at her face, but his shoulders loosen. He breaks off the smallest corner first and drops it beneath the cartwheel. The dog lifts its head, accepts the tribute, and decides, with the grave authority of dogs everywhere, that Tom may be trusted. You duck through the inn door then, carrying the cold with you for a moment before the hearth begins to take it apart. Behind you, in the stable yard, the boy resumes his quiet work. The bell's last note fades above the roofs. The town breathes itself into night, and you begin to understand that some minds are not absent, not empty, not bewitched, but listening to the world at a pitch most others cannot bear to hear. You step into the smoky hall, and for a moment the whole room seems to turn toward you, as rooms do when a stranger brings in a draught. Heat pushes against your face. Smoke hangs beneath the low rafters in a blue-grey layer, softening the beams and making the hanging herbs look like little sleeping beasts. The floor is stone beneath a scatter of rushes, old and new mixed together, some sweet with lavender and meadow sweet, some less sweet with the honest memories of boots, dogs, spilled ale, and a day's worth of human decisions. Medieval housekeeping is not so much a battle against dirt as a long negotiation with it, and dirt, being patient, often wins. You find a place near the wall, close enough to the hearth to thaw your fingers, but not so close that sparks begin to show an interest in your cloak. A serving girl passes with a wooden bowl of pottage, thick with peas, onions, and barley. She sets it before you with half a loaf of coarse bread and a trencher darkened by use. The bread is heavy, sour, and wonderfully real. Steam rises from the bowl, carrying the smell of leeks and salt pork, and you lean over it as if listening for counsel. Outside, the stable-yard mutters softly, hooves shifting in straw, a latch touched once, twice, 3 times. Inside, the hall gathers itself into evening. Traveller sits shoulder to shoulder along the benches. A peddler has spread his pack near his feet, guarding ribbons, horn combs, cheap pilgrim pins, and little pewter charms with the possessiveness of a dragon whose treasure includes buttons. A wool merchant warms his hands and complains that the bridge toll has doubled since Michaelmas. A carter with mud up to his knees swears that the road west is more hole than road. Someone laughs and says the road west has always been so, only now it charges admission. The bell from the town church sounds again, dull through the walls, marking the hour more faithfully than any sleepy mind can manage. People pause without seeming to pause. A woman crosses herself. A man mutters the name of a saint. The serving girl counts cups under her breath as she moves from table to table, touching each rim lightly before she fills it. 1, 2, 3, 4, then back again. She is quick, careful, and silent unless spoken to, and when a guest tries to hurry her, she blinks hard, as though the words have tangled her steps. The innkeeper's wife notices and places a hand gently on the girl's elbow. "Let her reckon," she says, "else she spills." The guest shrugs, but he waits, It is such a small mercy that no song would bother with it, yet you see how it steadies the room. The girl finishes her count, fills the cups, and moves on. No one praises her. No one needs to. In this age, patience is often rationed like winter cheese, but sometimes a little of it is handed across a table and becomes enough. Near the hearth, an old woman with a chin sharp as a nutcracker watches the serving girl go and whispers to her neighbour. She was born during an eclipse, they say. No, says the neighbour, delighted to correct her. During a storm. Thunder shook the shutters. Same trouble, the old woman replies. No one can quite agree whether thunder, eclipses, holy days, strange cravings, frightened mothers, or offended fairies make a mind turn differently. Yet everyone seems prepared to offer a reason, especially after ale. The explanations drift through the hall like smoke, too much moonlight through the cradle cloth. A charm tied wrong, a saint neglected, a father who broke a vow, a mother who saw a hare cross her path before childbirth. Some swear that if a child does not look into your eyes, it's because angels have shown them brighter things. Others say it is pride, stubbornness, or bad teaching. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such talk comes more from fear or from the simple ache of not knowing. You eat slowly. The pottage warms you from the inside with humble determination. Across the room, a broad-shouldered man with a scarred thumb tells a story about his cousin, who could not bear wool against his skin and wore linen even in frost, would rather chatter his teeth blue than put on a proper cloak, he says. My aunt said he was contrary, or bewitched, says the peddler, hoping the word will improve the story. Or clever, says the innkeeper's wife, setting down a jug. Woolwitches. The men chuckle, but softly. No one argues with the woman who controls the ale. Beyond the open inner door, you glimpse a smaller chamber where two household servants kneel near a chest, folding blankets. One folds and refolds the same wool coverlet until its edges lie square. The other rolls her eyes, then, after a moment, helps align the corners. There is irritation in the gesture, but also practice. You sense that this has happened before, and will happen again, and the house has learned to bend around it as a tree bends around a stone in the soil. A thin man in a pilgrim's cloak sits alone beneath a hanging bunch of rosemary. He rocks slightly while rubbing a wooden bead between finger and thumb. Not prayer exactly, though perhaps near enough. The bead is polished from long use. His lips move in a repeated phrase you cannot hear. When the peddler's pack shifts and a little bell tied to it gives a sharp, bright ring, the pilgrim stops at once and presses his palm flat to the table. His face goes pale. The peddler begins to make some joke, but the innkeeper's wife catches his eye, and the joke dies young, which is one of the kinder deaths available to jokes in a tavern. The brown dog from the gate slips in when someone opens the door for more firewood. It shakes damp from its coat, earning complaints from 3 benches, then noses its way beneath your table as if you have always been its preferred person. You lower a crust without looking too obvious about it. The dog takes it with solemn grace. Somewhere outside, Tom is still with the horses, or so you imagine, matching breath to breath, latch to latch. In a world where animals may be easier than people because they say exactly what they mean with ears, hooves, teeth, and weight. The hall settles deeper. Beeswax candles burn near the better seats, while cheaper tallow dips smoke and gutter closer to the door. The difference in smell is plain beeswax sweet and clean, tallow fatty and sour, a small map of wealth written in flame. A young apprentice with ink on his sleeve holds his hands too close to one of the candles and stares into it until his master snaps his fingers. The boy startles, then recites, perfectly and without hesitation. The tally of goods brought in that afternoon 2 sacks of oats, 3 salted eels, 6 lengths of undyed cloth, 1 cracked cartwheel left in the yard, and a missing iron hook from the stable wall. The master looks annoyed, then impressed, then annoyed again, because admiration can be inconvenient when you're trying to scold someone. A head full of nails, he mutters. Everything sticks there. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such a head is a blessing or a burden. In a monastery, it might copy psalms without error. In a market, it might remember every debt. In a kitchen, it might know exactly when the bread will burn. In a crowded hall, it might drown beneath clatter that others barely notice. The same mind can be called gifted at sunrise, troublesome by noon, and touched by spirits after supper, depending mostly on who has been inconvenienced. You sit with your bowl empty and your hands finally warm. Around you, judgment and kindness mingle as closely as smoke and firelight. A whispered superstition passes one way, a practical mercy passes the other. Someone laughs at oddness, someone quietly makes room for it. The rushes rustle underfoot, the bell fades, the dog sighs beneath your bench, and as the night thickens against the shutters, you begin to feel how many lives in this town are held not by understanding, not exactly, but by habit, tolerance, fear, usefulness, and the fragile grace of being known. The innkeeper's wife has decided you are too travel-worn to be trusted with choices, and so she sends you before dawn toward the monastery guest house beyond the north lane, where the beds are narrow. The rules are many, and the brothers water their ale less aggressively. You rise while the hearth is still a red eye in the ash. A baker's boy carries a covered tray through the mist, and the smell of new bread slips into the cold. You think of Tom, checking the world into place before the day can begin. Then the church bell sounds for the first office, slow and dampened by fog, and from farther off another bell answers, higher and cleaner, from the abbey. You follow that sound. The monastery stands beyond a low wall, its stones pale in the first grey of morning. Frost whitens the herb beds. Near the gatehouse, a carved saint has lost both hands and most of his nose, though someone has tucked a sprig of evergreen into the crook of his arm. No one can quite agree whether broken holy statues still hear prayers better than new ones, but people ask them anyway, because hope is not fussy about furniture. A lay brother opens the gate and nods toward the guest house, where travellers are allowed to warm themselves, eat plain food, and avoid offending God loudly. Inside, the air is cleaner than the inn, though colder. Rushes lie fresh on the floor, mixed with sweet flag and dried mint to keep away fleas, bad smells, and possibly despair. A long table sits beneath a narrow window, with bowls, a jug of small ale, coarse bread, and a pot of something that might be beans if treated kindly in low light. Then you hear counting, not loud, not meant for you. A soft murmur comes from the passage beyond the guest room, steady as dripping water. 12 for the altar, 4 for the lectern, 2 for the guest house, 1 spare by the sacristy door. The words move closer, then pause. A thin monk appears carrying a wooden tray of candles, his sleeves marked with soot and ink. His eyes do not rest on yours but on the tray, where each candle lies aligned by length. The lay brother sighs. Brother Aelred counts them every morning. Brother Aelred stops, and every evening. Yes, says the lay brother, and every evening, and after wind, and after wind. The lay brother agrees. with the weary tenderness of someone who has lost this battle many times. Brother Aelred sets the tray down and removes the candles one by one. He turns each so the wick faces the same direction. His fingers are stained black at the tips, and there is a notch in his thumbnail where a quill knife has bitten him. Candle, breath, candle, breath. A younger novice passes the door and whispers too loudly, "There goes Aelred of the Candle Kingdom." Another snorts into his sleeve. Brother Aelred's shoulders rise only slightly. He continues counting. He copies charters, the lay brother tells you, as if offering a defence. Misses nothing. Not a boundary stone, not a rent of eggs, not a widow's right to gather sticks in the Lord's wood. If Aelred writes it, you may trust it. From the corridor comes the scratch of quills, many of them, like mice holding a church council. The writing room lies beyond the cloister, where brothers bend over parchment beneath winter light and the careful glow of beeswax. Ink is made with oak galls and iron, darkening as it dries, and parchment must be scraped smooth with a curved knife until it accepts the word. There are prayers to copy, accounts to keep, saints' lives to preserve, and more lists than any reasonable soul would expect heaven to require. A bowl drops somewhere behind you. The clatter is small, but Brother Aelred shuts his eyes as if a door has slammed inside his skull. His lips move once, twice. Then he touches the nearest candle and begins again from the beginning. 12 for the altar. The lay brother lowers his voice. Best not interrupt. Some swear that a mind like Aelred's is sharpened by angels. Others say too much solitude makes a man strange, like cheese kept too long in a cellar. A few think ink fumes can settle in the head. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the brothers laugh because they are unkind, or because they are afraid of what they cannot name, or simply because monasteries, for all their prayers, contain human beings in wool habits. When the meal is finished, you stand near the writing room door, provided you do not drip on anything expensive, which includes almost everything. Aelred sits at a slanted desk before a page ruled in pale lines. He copies from an older manuscript with a stillness so complete that only his fingers seem alive. Around him, other monks shift, cough, whisper, scrape, sigh. Aelred continues, letter by letter, as if building a stone wall no storm may enter. Above his desk hangs a charm of braided thread and a scrap of parchment bearing the name of Saint Columba, said by some to guard scribes from mistakes, though no one agrees whether the saint cares more for spelling or humility. Beside it, Aelred has placed 3 small stones. After each line, he moves 1 stone from left to right. After 3 lines, he moves them back. The suspicious monk at the far desk, old Brother Martin with eyebrows like storm clouds, watches him and shakes his head. Yet when a novice brings a tangled account from the cellarer, full of smudged numbers and missing hens, Martin carries it straight to Aelred. The thin monk reads once, taps the page twice, and says, without pride, the rent from Willowcroft is counted twice. The eggs are 6 short because St. Cuthbert's Eve fell on market day. Brother Martin squints, then grunts, which in monastic speech may be nearly praise. You see it then the narrow bridge he walks, mocked for counting candles, needed for counting debts, teased for loving silence, trusted with words that decide fields, food, and widows' rights. His mind is fastened to the world by threads others overlook wick lengths, line marks, missing eggs, the sound of a bowl, the pattern that keeps fear from flooding the room. At midday, the abbey bell rings again, and the whole house moves as one body toward prayer, Brother Elred gathers his candles. One has burned unevenly, its side sagging like a tired pilgrim. He trims the wick with a small knife and sets it upright. You follow the brothers into the cold passage, carrying ink, wax, mint rushes, and bean pottage. Behind you, Elred's stones wait on the desk in a perfect row. Ahead, the bell keeps time for everyone, whether they welcome its sound or endure it, and outside the gate, when the lay brother finally opens it, the brown dog is still there, patient as a relic no one has certified, ready to follow you into whatever order or disorder the road provides. By the time you leave the monastery gate, dawn has become a pale smear above the rooftops, and the road back toward town is waking under a skin of frost. The brown dog trots ahead with the confidence of a creature who owns every ditch, doorway, and dropped crust from here to Easter. Behind you. The abbey bell fades into the morning air, and for a little while its rhythm remains in your bones measured, patient, unavoidable. You think of Brother Aelred's candles, of his stones moving left to right, of the way the world can become manageable when divided into small faithful pieces. Then the market bell rings. It is not like the abbey bell. It is sharper, busier, less interested in your peace. It strikes from the town square as you pass beneath the reopened gate, and with it the whole morning seems to burst its seams. Carts rattle over cobbles, hooves strike sparks from stones. Geese complain with the bitter eloquence of unpaid lawyers. Merchants shout prices before their stalls are fully built, as though the turnips might flee if not named loudly enough. A woman carrying eggs scolds a boy for walking too near her basket. A fishmonger lifts the cloth from a tray of smoked eels, and the smell slides into the street with great confidence. You step aside as a pair of oxen drag a cart of firewood through the lane, their breath steaming in slow clouds. The driver has tied a blue thread to the yoke, a charm against the evil eye, though no one can quite agree whether oxen are especially vulnerable to envy. Perhaps, you think, they are simply large enough to attract opinions. At the edge of the square, the market reeve stands beside a trestle table, collecting tolls a coin for a stall, a fee for a cart, a little extra if the seller looks too prosperous or too confused. He marks each payment on a tally stick, cutting notches into wood with a short knife. One half will stay with him, the other with the merchant, and together the notches will remember what men may later choose to forget. The square itself is a living knot. Canvas awnings flap, ropes creak, buckets slosh, chickens escape, are captured, then escape again in what appears to be their chosen profession. A spice seller opens a small chest, releasing scents of pepper, cloves, and cinnamon so rich they seem almost imaginary beside the cabbage and wet wool. Nearby, a woman sells coarse bread from a cloth-covered board, each loaf marked with the baker's sign, because bread has rules here, and a dishonest loaf can bring a baker to shame in the street. Some towns even drag bad bread on a hurdle or place light loaves beside the offender, though those who tell such tales never fully agree whether the punishment improves the bread. You move slowly through the crowd, letting your shoulder brush rough wool, fur-lined cloaks, leather belts, baskets of onions, and hanging bundles of dried herbs. The noise presses close. It comes from above, below, beside, behind. Bells, bargaining, hooves, laughter, a hammer striking a peg, a pig protesting its future, a child singing half a rhyme near the well. To most people, this is simply market day. To some, you begin to understand, it may be weather of another kind. A storm made of voices. Near the horse trough, Tom stands with two bridles looped over his arm. He's not in the stable yard now, but at the edge of the square, where animals are brought to be traded, inspected, praised falsely, and bought reluctantly. His face is pale beneath the morning chill. His eyes move quickly, not from face to face, but from motion to motion, a swinging bucket, a stamping hoof, a cartwheel, a loose strap, a dropped knife flashing near straw. He hears, perhaps, too much. The market pours itself over him. The stableman beside him is arguing with a farmer about a bay gelding. Sound as a bell, the farmer says. Tom flinches at the word bell, or perhaps at the actual bell that rings again behind the toll table. The gelding flicks its ear. Tom reaches without looking and tightens the bridle strap by one hole. A moment later, the horse tosses its head. The loosened buckle would have slipped free. The farmer stops talking. The stableman notices, though he pretends not to. "Good lad," he says, too softly for the crowd, but not too softly for Tom. Then a potter's boy drops a stack of bowls. The crash splits the square. Shards leap across the cobbles. Several people laugh. One curses. A goose screams, apparently in sympathy with the pottery. Tom freezes. His hands rise to his ears, and his shoulders fold inward, making him look suddenly much younger. The stableman snaps, "Don't stand there, boy." But the words do not reach him in any useful way. Noise piles upon noise. The dog darts under a stall. A merchant complains about broken wares. The market bell swings again, because whoever rings it has chosen this morning to become everyone's enemy. You're close enough to see Tom's lips moving. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But the count cannot find its road through the clatter. An older woman selling wool thread sees him and lifts the corner of her stall cloth, making a small shadowed space between baskets. "Here," she says, not loudly, "mind the blue skeins." Tom does not answer. Yet after a moment he steps behind the hanging cloth, where the sound is softened by wool and canvas. The woman turns back to her customers as if nothing has happened. It is a practiced kindness, hidden in plain sight. She winds thread around her fingers and tells a buyer that red thread protects against fever if tied to the wrist before sunrise. Some swear it works best if blessed on St. Blaise's Day. Others say the knot matters more than the saint, even now. It is hard to tell whether such customs heal the body, calm the mind, or simply give frightened hands something to do. You pause by her stall, pretending to inspect the thread. Behind the cloth, Tom breathes with careful effort. The red thread at his wrist has been rubbed thin. After a time, he reaches out and touches the blue skeins in order, left to right, then right to left. His gaze steadies. The market has not grown quiet, but a little pocket of order has opened inside it. Around you, business continues. A butcher weighs sausages. A monk from the abbey bargains for lamp oil with the grim seriousness of a man defending theology. The suspicious Brother Martin passes through the square with his hood low, eyeing the spice seller as if nutmeg might be doctrinally risky. Near the trough, the cracked cartwheel from last night has been brought to a wheelwright, who taps it and says the rope binding was clever but doomed. That, you suspect, describes many repairs in the Middle Ages, including several governments. When Tom returns to the horses, the stableman does not ask what happened. He simply hands him the quieter mare, the same grey one from the previous night. She lowers her head toward him. He strokes her neck 7 times, and the motion is almost invisible unless you know to watch for it. The crowd pushes and swirls, but the mare stands calm. The stableman resumes bargaining, this time speaking a little less loudly. You drift onward through the market, past pilgrim badges stamped with scallop shells, Past iron keys laid out like dark teeth, past baskets of apples wrinkled from winter storage. The bell rings once more, but now you hear more than noise. You hear how the square asks different things of different minds. For one person, it is trade and gossip. For another, it is a maze of sharp edges. For another, it is a map of details no one else notices: the loose strap, the false weight, the missing coin, the frightened horse. By the time the sun clears the roofs, your cloak smells of smoke, fish, and wet wool. The dog returns from beneath the stall with something in its mouth that may once have been edible and may yet become regrettable. You follow the lane beyond the square, carrying with you the clangor of the market and the small memory of a blue-shadowed stall, where a boy found quiet not because the world understood him, but because one woman made room for his silence. You leave the market by a lane so narrow that two honest people can barely pass without becoming better acquainted than either intended. The noise of the square follows you for a while, caught between the timbered houses and the overhanging upper rooms, but with each step it thins into ordinary morning sounds: a broom scratching at a threshold, a hen fussing beneath a cart, water poured from a window into the gutter with very little ceremony. Your boots find mud again, because mud is the true lord of these roads and accepts all travellers equally. The brown dog trots beside you, proud of whatever questionable treasure it stole near the fish stall. A thread of river mist still lingers in the lower streets, wrapping itself around doorposts and barrels. Above, strips of linen hang stiff from lines, not drying so much as reconsidering their future. A woman beats dust from a blanket with a willow switch. Nearby, a boy carries a bundle of rushes for fresh flooring. Sweet flag mixed through them so the house may smell for one hopeful afternoon. Less like last week. The lane bends past a small roadside shrine set into a wall, where a painted saint looks down with flaking eyes. Someone has left a pin, a crust of bread, and 3 hazelnuts before the little niche. No one can quite agree whether St. Dymphna helps troubled minds, headaches, fright, or all sorrows that have no proper name. But the wax drips beneath her image show that many have tried asking. A ribbon tied to the iron grill stirs in the faint wind. You touch the cold stone beside it as you pass, not quite praying, not quite refusing to. The healer's cottage waits near the edge of town, where the houses loosen and kitchen gardens begin. Its roof sags under old thatch, green with moss along the shaded side. Bundles of dried herbs hang beneath the eaves: sage, rue, betony, lavender, feverfew, and long strips of willow bark tied with twine. The air around the door smells sharp and green, a welcome change after fish, dung, and the market's confidence. Smoke slips from a hole in the roof. Chickens patrol the yard like tiny officials. Inside, the wise woman is grinding something in a stone mortar. She's not the sort of wise woman songs prefer. She has no raven on her shoulder, no crown of moonlight, no dramatic habit of speaking in riddles. She is short, broad-handed, wrapped in a brown wool gown, with a linen coif tied neatly beneath her chin, and a face lined by years of listening to complaints. One eye is clouded, but the other is keen enough for 2. A string of wooden beads hangs from her belt beside a small knife, a pouch of salt, and a key so large it looks as though it might unlock winter. "Shut the door," she says without looking up. Cold makes the herbs sulk. You obey, because anyone who speaks of sulking herbs with such authority deserves caution. The room is low and warm. Rushes cover the beaten earth floor, fresher than those at the inn, and a small fire glows beneath an iron pot. Shelves line the walls, crowded with clay jars, linen packets, goose-feather quills, wax tablets, dried roots, sheep fat, vinegar, honey, and little folded charms sealed with thread. A bowl of leeches sits near the window in clear water, their dark bodies curling and uncurling with quiet determination. They look less like medicine than a committee of unpleasant ideas. A woman sits on a stool near the hearth, twisting her apron in both hands. Beside her, a young man rocks gently, heel to toe, his gaze fixed on the fire hook. He is older than Tom, perhaps 20, with a soft beard and large hands. His mother, you assume, speaks for him, because the room has decided this before you arrive. He will not sleep when the wind changes, she says, will not eat from a bowl if the rim is chipped, will not hear singing without striking his head. And yesterday he shouted at Father Oswin for ringing the handbell too near his ear. The wise woman continues grinding. Father Oswin rings that bell like he means to wake the dead and ask them for rent. The mother blinks. The young man gives one brief breath that may be laughter. The wise woman sets down the pestle and studies him, not as others might, not as a puzzle meant to embarrass the room, but as a shepherd studies weather. Does wool trouble him since he was little? Smoke. Sometimes. Crowds. The mother looks away. Market days are worst. Some swear that such troubles come from bad humours rising in the brain, too much black bile, too little warmth, a fright taken before baptism, or a spirit offended by careless words. Others mutter of elves, changelings, or moonlight. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the old explanations comfort people or trap them. They give shape to worry. Yes, but sometimes the shape has teeth. The wise woman reaches for a strip of soft linen. From a jar she takes a little balm made with beeswax, chamomile, and oil. No singing for 3 days, she says. No handbell near him. Linen under the collar. Feed him from the plain wooden bowl if that is the bowl he trusts. And when the wind turns, give him warm ale with honey and betony. Not because it will change his nature, but because warm hands and a warm belly make most burdens smaller. The mother frowns, as if she expected a stronger magic. The wise woman notices, I can write a charm too, if you need the neighbours to respect it. At this, she takes a scrap of parchment and writes a holy name in small careful letters, then folds it twice and ties it with red thread. She murmurs a prayer to St. Bartholomew, though you suspect the saint is being asked to lend dignity to common sense. The charm is placed in a little cloth pouch. Hang it by his bed, she says, and tell Father Oswin I said the bell is for God, not for cracking skulls. The young man reaches for the pouch but does not touch her fingers. She allows this. She sets it on the table and lets him take it when he is ready. You think of the wool seller lifting her stool cloth for Tom, of the innkeeper's wife letting the serving girl count cups, of Brother Aelred beginning again after the bowl fell. Here, too, understanding is imperfect. It wears the clothes available to it: herbs, saints, charms, rules, warm ale, quieter bells. Before you leave, the wise woman gives you a sprig of rosemary for the road. For memory, she says. Does it work? She shrugs. People remember to ask for it. Outside, the light has softened. The market noise is distant now, rubbed smooth by walls and mist. The dog noses at the healer's door until a chicken objects and sends it retreating with great personal dignity. You tuck the rosemary into your cloak and step back into the muddy lane, carrying with you the smell of chamomile and smoke, the sight of folded parchment, and the quiet thought that mercy, in any century, often begins as nothing grander than making the world a little less sharp for someone who feels every edge. The muddy lane draws you away from the healer's cottage and out toward the looser edge of the town, where fences sag, Gardens sleep under frost, and the smoke from each low roof rises in patient grey threads. Your rosemary sprig rests inside your cloak, sharp and clean against the smell of damp wool. The brown dog, having survived its brief diplomatic incident with the chicken, trots ahead as if guiding you by ancient right. Behind you, the healer's door closes with a wooden thud, and her words stay with you not to change her nature, but to make its burdens smaller. The road bends between winter fields. Stubble sticks through the pale ground. A crow hops along a ridge of frozen earth, inspecting the world with the expression of a tax collector. Farther off, men are mending a hedge, weaving cut branches between posts to keep animals in or out, depending on the animal's ambition. A girl carries kindling in her apron. An old man drives 2 pigs with a hazel switch, though the pigs appear to regard his authority as a rumour. By late afternoon, the sky lowers, heavy with the promise of sleet. You reach a village tucked beneath a bare hill, its cottages clustered around a small green, a well, and a wooden cross blackened by weather. Smoke stains the thatch above each hearth hole. Rushes and straw lie piled near doorways, ready to be brought in for bedding, floor covering, or emergency insulation against the kind of cold that seems personally offended by human skin. A woman at the well notices your travel-stiff walk and points you toward the Reeves house, where strangers may sit by the hearth if they are polite, harmless, and not carrying fleas in unusual numbers. Since no one asks the fleas directly, you are allowed in. The Reeves Hall is not large, but after the road it feels almost generous. The hearth burns in the centre of the room, smoke rising toward a louver in the roof, though much of it pauses among the soot-black rafters to consider other options. A pot of pottage simmers over the fire, thick with beans, leeks, and a bone that has clearly given all it can to society. Wooden bowls wait on a bench. A cheese wrapped in linen sits beneath a cloth. On the wall hang iron keys, a sickle, a rosary of dark beads, and a little bunch of rowan twigs tied with red thread to keep away ill luck, wandering spirits, and perhaps relatives who borrow tools without returning them. You are given a place near the fire and a cup of small ale. The dog is given nothing officially, then receives 3 scraps unofficially, which is how many laws truly work. Around the hearth sit the Reeve, his wife, a thatcher with straw in his beard, 2 older women spinning wool, and a narrow-faced boy of perhaps 12 years who sits on a low stool near the woodpile. He is not a small child, yet not grown either, and his gaze is fixed on the flames with the solemn attention of someone reading a difficult book. This is Will. The Reeves' wife says, "He'll tell you the road better than any carter." Will does not look up. If you came from the North Gate, your left boot has Abbey clay. You pass the herb woman after terse, because the frost on your hem has melted but not dried. The dog followed you from town, though he first followed someone else from the Shrine Road yesterday. The room goes quiet for half a breath. The thatcher snorts. See strange as a 3-legged ladder. Useful as one, sometimes, says one of the spinning women. Will continues watching the fire. The bridge plank after the mill is split. Cartwheels avoid it by turning right, but the right rut is deeper. A loaded cart will stick before sunset if sleet comes. The Reeve exhales through his nose, annoyed because the boy is almost certainly correct. Medieval adults enjoy clever children mostly when the cleverness arrives on command and does not inconvenience supper. You warm your hands around the cup and listen as the talk circles him. Will remembers every feast day in the parish, not just Christmas, Easter, and the great saints everyone knows, but obscure vigils, fasting days, rent days, and the date-old Elise lost 2 hens to a fox 3 years ago. He remembers who borrowed a mattock, who promised a measure of oats, whose boundary stone leaned after the flood, and which families owe candles to the church for souls not yet settled. He can recite the turns from the village to the abbey, to the ferry, to 3 market towns, and to a ruined chapel in the woods where no sensible person goes unless searching for lost sheep or poor choices. Some swear that memory like his is a blessing. Others say it is a nuisance, especially those who owe money. One old tale claims children born when the church bell rings during a storm may keep echoes trapped in their heads forever. No one can quite agree whether Will's gift comes from God, from fever, from his mother's craving for walnuts before his birth, or from the little rowan charm tied above his cradle. His mother, sitting near the breadboard with flour on her forearms, says nothing for a long while. Then she says, "He did not speak much until he was 5. The room softens, just a little. He would line acorns along the threshold," she says, "every morning. If someone kicked them aside, he screamed until he shook. We thought." She stops and glances toward the rowan twigs. "Well, people thought many things. Those who tell the tale never fully agree about quiet children. Some say silence means wisdom, some say stubbornness, some whisper about changelings, fairy bargains, or a soul that has not settled properly into the body. In villages where every hand is needed, difference is not studied. It is endured, feared, used, protected, mocked, and sometimes loved, all in the same hour." The reeve reaches for a small wooden tally stick from the shelf. Ask him what Martin the miller owes. Will answers at once. 3 hens, 1 measure of barley, and 2 days' carting after Lammas, but he paid 1 day with his nephew, who worked badly. The thatcher laughs into his cup. Worked badly is generous. The lad held a rake like it had insulted him. The hearth brightens. Outside, sleep begins ticking against the shutter. Will's fingers move against his knee, tapping a pattern you cannot follow. When the laughter grows too loud, his shoulders rise. His mother notices and sets a plain wooden bowl beside him, the one with a dark burn mark near the rim. He touches the mark twice, then takes bread from her hand. No ceremony, no explanation. Just the right bowl, at the right time, given by someone who knows. You think of the healer's plain bowl, Tom's 7 strokes, Brother Elred's stones, the serving girl's cups, small anchors, all of them, a world of bells, mud, debts, saints, smoke, and sudden noise becomes bearable through objects others might overlook. As evening closes, Will tells the reeve which roof will leak first if the wind turns west. The reeve grumbles, but sends the thatcher to look. A few moments later, the thatcher calls through the door that the boy is right. Of course he is. The room accepts this with the weary irritation reserved for useful truths. You sip your ale as the sleet thickens. The fire paints every face in copper. The dog sleeps with its nose under its tail. Will watches the sparks rise into the rafters, perhaps counting them, perhaps not. And you feel how a village can misunderstand a mind for years, then still lean on it when roads flood, debts tangle, roofs fail, and memory becomes the warmest light in the room. Morning comes with the slow reluctance of a tired ox. The sleet has hardened overnight into a thin crust that shines along the village green, and when you step from the reeve's hall, your boots crackle through it softly. Smoke rises from the cottages in straight pale columns. A cock crows from somewhere behind a hurdle fence, though it sounds less like triumph than complaint. The brown dog emerges after you, stretches each leg as if preparing for royal inspection, and trots toward the well, where women are already breaking ice with the handles of their buckets. Will stands near the doorway, wrapped in a patched cloak, watching the green. He has already told the reeve that the roof over the byre will drip before noon unless someone shifts the thatch above the north beam. The reeve has already said he does not need a boy to tell him his own roof. The thatcher has already climbed up to fix it. This is village life in its purest form, everyone annoyed, everyone cooperating, nobody admitting anything. A bell rings from the little church, thinner than the abbey bell, less commanding than the market bell, but enough to draw people from doorways. Today is Manor Court Day. The reeve tells you this while pulling on his mittens. The Lord himself will not sit there. Of course. Lords have a rare talent for being represented by other men in cold rooms. Instead, his steward has come from the manor house to hear complaints, settle small disputes, collect fines, confirm customs, and remind the village that even mud has a master. You follow the others along a cart track toward the manor yard. Frost lies white on the hedges. The fields beyond are still, their furrows dark beneath the morning glaze. A line of villagers moves with you men in wool hoods, women with baskets, a tenant carrying a hen under one arm as payment or apology, and old Alice with a face so stern the cold seems to ask her permission before touching it. Will walks beside his mother, tapping his thumb to each finger inside his sleeve. The manor hall stands low and broad within a ditch and fence, its oak door banded with iron. Inside, rushes cover the floor, though they are old enough to have given up pretending at freshness. A fire burns at one end, but the heat stays close to the flames, as if shy. The steward sits at a table with a wax tablet, a roll of parchment, and a knife for trimming his quill. Beside him rests a little chest with 3 locks, because important papers apparently sleep better when imprisoned. A clerk warms ink between his hands and looks offended by the season. People gather along the walls. The dog slips beneath a bench and settles on your boot. The suspicious Brother Martin from the Abbey is here too, standing near the door with his hood low. He has come about a boundary note copied by Brother Aelred, and he watches everyone as though sin might be hiding in their sleeves. The first matters are ordinary enough. A broken fence, a stray pig in the wrong barley stubble, a widow's right to gather fallen branches from the Lord's wood, a fine for baking bread underweight, though the baker swears the flour was damp and the saints know it. Some swear that placing a loaf beneath Saint Honoré's image keeps it from shrinking in the oven, while others say honest scales work better. No one can quite agree, but the steward finds the baker anyway, proving that law, unlike bread, rises reliably when money's involved. Then Will's name is spoken, not by the steward at first, but by Martin the miller, a square man with flour in the creases of his face and resentment sitting comfortably in his shoulders. He claims Will has slandered him by saying aloud, before half the village, that he still owes barley and hens. The miller insists the boy has no proper understanding, no right to speak of debts, and no respect for his elders. Will's mother tightens her hand around the edge of her cloak. The reeve clears his throat. The boy remembers. The boy meddles, says the miller. Repeats things like a cursed magpie. Stands by the mill race counting sacks. Frightens my customers. Will looks not at the miller, nor the steward, but at the floor near the table leg. His fingers move. Thumb, forefinger, middle, ring. Again. The steward leans back. His fur-lined collar frames his face handsomely, which is unfortunate because it makes him look wiser than he is. Does the boy understand an oath? A murmur passes through the hall. Oaths matter here. Words are not light things. They are tied to saints, relics, bread, land, and punishment. There is a belief. older than anyone cares to trace, that a false oath sworn over holy bones may twist the tongue, blight the hand, or bring fever before Lent. Even now, it is hard to tell whether people fear God's justice, village gossip, or the very practical fine that follows being caught. Will's mother says he knows truth. The miller snorts. He knows numbers. Maybe, not manners. The clerk dips his quill. The scratch of it is loud in the pause. You remember Brother Aelred, mocked for candles, trusted for charters. You remember Will naming debts by the fire while laughter pressed too close around him. The hall seems to lean toward the boy, waiting to decide whether his memory is gift, nuisance, or fault. The steward asks, Will, what did Martin owe at Lammas? Will does not answer. His mother bends slightly. Will, the room waits harder, which does not help. Waiting can be as loud as shouting when everyone does it at once. Will's shoulders rise. The miller folds his arms. Someone whispers that the boy is moon-touched. Someone else mutters that he should carry a hazel charm against wandering thoughts. Those who tell such tales never fully agree whether charms steady the mind or simply steady the hands of those watching. Then old Alice steps forward. Ask it plain, and not with everyone breathing down his neck like cattle at a trough. The steward, to his credit, does not argue with old Alice. Few survive long by doing that. He lowers his voice. Will, tell me what you remember. Will touches the burn mark on the wooden bowl his mother's brought hidden beneath her cloak. 1 touch. 2. His breathing slows. Then he speaks, still looking at the table leg. 3 hens, 1 measure of barley, 2 days carting, 1 day paid by nephew John, who broke the rake handle on the 2nd furrow. 1 hen paid after St. Swithin's reign, 2 hens unpaid, barley unpaid. Brother Martin produces Aelred's copied note from his sleeve. The steward reads. The reeve nods. The miller's face reddens in a way that suggests memory has become expensive. The judgment is small. 2 hens owed, barley owed, a mild fine for disorderly dispute. No chains, no great drama, just village law settling like dust. Yet something has shifted. The hall has seen Will's mind not as a curse, not merely as trouble, but as a kind of living tally stick, notched by every promise others hoped would fade. As people drift out, the steward tells the reeve to keep the boy from public quarrels. The reeve grunts. Will's mother gathers the bowl beneath her cloak. The miller avoids everyone's eyes. Outside, the frost has begun to melt into mud. You step back into the pale day with a dog at your heel, the smell of old rushes still in your cloak, behind you. The manor door groans shut, iron against oak. Ahead, the road bends toward low fields and distant bells, and you carry with you the uneasy lesson of that cold hall that a village may judge what it does not understand, yet still, when pressed by debt, weather, and truth, find itself relying on the very mind it once tried to quiet. The road beyond the manor yard leads you out past the last cottages, where the morning has turned from frost to mud with impressive speed, as if the earth has been waiting all night to become difficult again. Behind you, the village shrinks into smoke, thatch, and the faint cluck of unpaid hens. Ahead, hedgerows run beside the track in black winter lines, their branches beaded with thawing drops. Every few steps, water slips from a twig and taps your hood. The brown dog shakes itself whenever this happens, though it is not clear whether from wetness or moral disapproval. Will and his mother do not follow far. At the bend, she thanks you for walking beside them, though you have done very little except be present, which in a tense hall is sometimes not nothing. Will looks past your shoulder toward the rutted road. 3 deep holes before the shrine, he says. Left side safer after the ash tree. You nod solemnly, because a warning from Will is better than a blessing from a careless priest. He touches the burn mark on his bowl once through the cloth, then turns back toward the village. His mother guides him home beneath the leaning hedges, and for a moment his small tapping pattern remains in your mind like a quiet bell. You go on. By mid-morning, mist thickens along the fields. The track meets a broader pilgrim road, worn by years of feet, hooves, carts, hope, and desperation. Here the mud is deeper, but the way is clearer. A line of travellers moves slowly beneath the pale sky, 2 women with bundles tied in linen, a man with a crutch, a merchant leading a mule, 3 young brothers from some village farther east, and an old pilgrim wearing so many badges on his hat that his head looks like a small travelling chapel. Little lead and pewter signs glint in the damp light scallop shells, crossed keys, tiny saints, a flask-shaped ampulla said to have once held holy water, though some swear such vessels hold more rain than miracle. No one can quite agree whether pilgrim badges protect the wearer, prove the journey, impress the neighbours, or simply give the hand something to touch during bad weather. Yet the old pilgrim touches each one in turn as he walks. Shell, key, saint, flask. Shell, key, saint, flask. The motion is so steady that you find yourself matching your steps to it. He notices you watching and smiles without shame. Keeps the road straight, he says. The badges, the touching. He says no more, as if this explains everything, and perhaps it does. You fall in with the group, because roads feel shorter when shared, and because lone travellers attract questions from men with clubs, toll rights, or both. The pilgrims speak in low voices. They are bound for an abbey 2 days west, where a relic of St. Winifred is said to help headaches, grief, weak knees, stubborn fevers, and possibly bad marriages if the donation is respectable. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the relic is truly hers. Brother Martin, were he here, would narrow his eyes at it until the bones confessed. But the pilgrims walk anyway. Certainty is rare. Roads are walked on less. After an hour, the rhythm settles over you. Boots pull from mud, cloaks brush. The mule snorts. Someone begins a repeated prayer, not loudly, not with drama, but in a soft murmur that rises and falls with breathing. Saint guide us. Christ keep us. Mary shelter us. Again and again. The words are simple enough that even the tired can carry them. They mark the road into pieces, one phrase to the ash tree, one to the ditch, one to the next bend. You remember Brother Elrod's stones and Tom's 7 strokes along the mare's neck? Pattern, you begin to understand, can be a little fence built around the mind when the wide world feels too open. Among the pilgrims walks a narrow woman in a grey cloak. Her name, you learn, is Eleanor. She keeps close to the left side of the road, never the middle, never the right unless forced by water. When carts approach, she stops entirely and turns her face toward the hedge until the wheels pass. One of the young brothers laughs the first time she does this, but his older companion elbows him hard enough to improve his manners. She knows every shrine between here and the coast, the old pilgrim says, every good well, every bad bridge, every inn where the beds crawl. Eleanor's mouth tightens. The inn at Red Ford has fleas in the south room. The north room leaks. The woman there waters ale with ditch water after dark. That too, says the old pilgrim cheerfully. Eleanor carries a small pouch of smooth pebbles, each marked with a charcoal line. At every roadside cross, she moves one pebble from the pouch at her belt to the pouch inside her sleeve. It is not a custom, you know. Perhaps it is not anyone's custom but hers. Some swear that counted stones keep away wandering spirits. Others say a traveller should drop a pebble at a shrine to leave behind a sin, though this seems unfair to the shrine, which must be cluttered enough already, even now. It is hard to tell whether Eleanor's stones belong to prayer, memory, worry, or all three braided together. At noon, you stop near a low wayside chapel, little more than a stone room with a bell niche and a roof patched in two kinds of thatch. A painted saint looks down from the inner wall, his face faded into a calm blur. Someone has laid rushes on the floor and left a stub of beeswax candle beside a chipped bowl. The pilgrims eat in the shelter of the chapel wall coarse bread, smoked fish, hard cheese, dried apples wrinkled from winter storage. You share what you have. The dog receives a fish skin and behaves afterward as if canonized. Eleanor sits apart at first. The old pilgrim places his hat beside her, badges shining upward, and says, "Count them for me. I've forgotten if the keys come before the shells." "You have not forgotten," she says. "No," he admits, "but you like them straight." She sets the hat on her knees and arranges the badges by shape. Shells together, keys together, saints facing forward, flask at the centre. The old pilgrim closes his eyes against the chapel wall, looking pleased. It is a kindness disguised as laziness, and therefore safe from embarrassment. A bell rings once from the chapel roof when the wind moves the rope. Eleanor flinches, but the sound is small, almost swallowed by mist. She touches two pebbles, then resumes aligning the badges. Outside, the road waits. Inside, travellers chew slowly, steam rising from cups of warmed ale. A man with a crutch tells a story of a well that cures toothache if you circle it backward before dawn. Another says he tried it and merely became wet and confused. This is accepted as a possible stage of healing. When you set out again, the group falls into the same order almost without speaking. Eleanor on the left, the old pilgrim near the front, the mule behind the merchant, you somewhere in the middle, with mud on your hem and rosemary still tucked in your cloak. The road has its dangers, yes, thieves, weather, bad bridges, worse beds, toll collectors who can smell hesitation. But it also has gifts for a mind that loves certainty. Shrines appear in known places. Bells mark known hours. Prayers repeat. Badges can be touched in sequence. Steps can be counted from cross to oak, from oak to ford, from ford to fire. The mist lifts a little near evening, revealing a dark line of trees ahead and beyond them, the faint tower of another abbey. The pilgrims murmur with relief. Even the mule seems to approve. The brown dog trots forward, then back, as if counting the flock. You walk on beneath the dimming sky, hearing the soft repeated prayer blend with hooves, breath, and wet wool. And you feel that for some misunderstood minds, the pilgrim road is not only a path to holiness, but a long, narrow kindness, a world with markers, rituals, and reasons to move one careful step at a time. The abbey tower grows clearer as you and the pilgrims come down through the last fold of mist, its square shape rising above bare orchards and low stone walls. Evening has not fully arrived, but the light has begun to turn pewter, and the cold gathers first in your fingers, then in your knees, then in that secret place between your shoulders where wet wool stores its grievances. The road dips beside a fish pond glazed at the edges with thin ice. Reeds whisper there. A pair of lay brothers cross the yard carrying baskets of turnips, walking with the grave importance of men trusted with the future of soup. At the outer gate, The old pilgrim touches his badges in order before speaking. Shell, key, saint, flask. The porter recognizes him and waves the party through, though he eyes the brown dog with suspicion. The dog lowers its head, affecting humility so poorly that even the porter notices. Still, no one sends it away. Monasteries, like villages, often claim strict rules and then quietly make exceptions for creatures that look hungry. You're given a place in the guest hall, where the pilgrims loosen their cloaks and steam faintly in the warmer air. There is bread, small ale, a bowl of leek broth, and a rule against loud speech after the evening office. This last rule is respected by almost everyone, which makes the few whispers seem as bold as trumpets. Outside, the bell rings for prayer, and bodies move through the cloister in dark lines. You follow a lay brother not into the church, but along a side passage where the abbey stores its written things. The passage is narrow, its floor worn hollow by centuries of sandals. Beeswax candles sit in iron brackets, each flame bent by draughts that slip through cracks in the stone. Somewhere nearby, water drips into a basin. The smell changes as you walk, less broth and wet wool now, more parchment, ink, dust, wax, and old oak. At the end of the passage hangs a heavy wool screen. Beyond it comes the soft, dry music of quills. Scratch, pause, dip, scratch, pause, dip. It is quieter than the market, quieter than the hall, quieter even than the pilgrim road, yet full of attention. The lay brother lifts the edge of the screen and gestures you in. The writing room is long and low, with narrow windows shuttered against the cold. Lamps burn where daylight fails. Several monks sit at slanted desks, their hoods pushed back, their hands stained dark from oak gall ink. Parchment sheets are pinned flat. Quills lie trimmed beside pumice stones, penknives, rulers, thread, scraps of wax, and small weights made from smooth stones. A brazier glows near the centre, though not too close to the desks, because parchment and fire have a famously poor friendship. Behind a second screen, half hidden from the others, sits a scribe you have not seen before. He's younger than Brother Aelred, perhaps not yet 30, with a narrow face, a bent neck, and hair clipped close around his ears. His name, the lay brother whispers, is Matthew. He speaks little, eats alone when allowed, and dislikes being touched on the shoulder. But his hand, the brother says, almost reverently, his hand is finer than a bishop's seal. Matthew does not greet you. He may not even know you have entered. His whole body leans over the page, not tensely, but completely, like a man listening through his fingers. Before him lies a psalter, the letters small and even, black as winter branches. Red initials bloom at the left edge of the lines. In one margin, a tiny bird perches among painted leaves, so delicate it seems it might fly if the room grows too loud. A novice approaches Matthew's screen with a cup of watered wine. "Brother," he says. Matthew's quill stops. The novice says nothing more. He sets the cup on a stool, exactly where an older monk points, and backs away. Matthew waits, breath shallow. Then, after a long moment, he resumes. Scratch, pause, dip, scratch, pause, dip. Some swear that too much silence makes such men stranger. Others say God gives certain souls a narrow gate so they may pass more deeply into holy work. No one can quite agree whether Matthew's quiet is pride, fear, devotion, dullness, wisdom, or some private weather no one else can feel. Yet the abbey keeps him behind the screen not only because he prefers it, but because his pages bring patrons, and patrons bring silver, and silver buys roof tiles. Even holiness appreciates a dry ceiling. On a shelf beside him rests a half-burned candle marked with little cuts along its side. When the wax sinks to the next notch, he shifts a pebble from one bowl to another. Near the bowls lies a strip of soft linen, perhaps to wrap around his wrist when the desk edge bites. There is also a charm tucked beneath the wood, a tiny folded prayer against shaking hands, tied with green thread. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such charms steady the hand by grace, by hope, or by giving worry a place to sit down. The abbey's prior enters quietly, though his shoes still make small sounds on the floor. Brother Martin follows him, of course, his suspicious eyebrows leading the way. They speak with the head scribe about a missing record, a grant of meadowland near the mill, copied years ago, now needed because two families disagree about grazing rights. The head scribe rubs his forehead. The chest of charters has been searched. The index tablet is smudged. The seal strings are tangled. This is what passes for a crisis in a writing room, and it is treated with the dread other men reserve for wolves. Matthew's quill stops again. Without turning, he says very softly, "Third shelf, back bundle, blue cord, not meadowland, willow pasture, copied after St. Cuthbert's frost." The old scribe spilled lamp oil on the corner. Everyone looks at him. Brother Martin narrows his eyes, perhaps offended that useful knowledge has appeared without permission. The head scribe goes to the shelf, reaches behind two bundles, and draws out a roll tied with faded blue cord. One corner bears a translucent stain where oil once dried. The prior unties it, reads, and exhales. "There," he says, "willow pasture." Matthew has already returned to his psalter. No triumph crosses his face, no smugness, not even relief. He simply continues where he left off, placing each letter carefully into the line. You realize he's preserved not only words he copies, but rooms, days, accidents, knots, stains, and the hidden order of things others pass by. His silence is not emptiness. It is a chamber crowded with exactness. The lay brother beside you murmurs. He hears everything, but answers little. Perhaps that is safer. In a world quick to name difference as rudeness, witchery, foolishness, or pride, silence can become a wall. Yet behind Matthew's screen, whole pieces of memory survive rents, prayers, names of the dead, borders of fields, promises made by men now buried, and little painted birds bright enough to outlast winter. The evening bell begins again, its sound softened by stone. One monk sneezes and apologizes to the page, which feels fair. Matthew moves a pebble from one bowl to the other as the candle reaches its notch. You step back through the wool screen, carrying the smell of ink and wax with you, and the dog rises from the passage as if it too has been studying law. Outside, the cloister is dim. Pilgrims murmur their prayers. Wet cloaks hang from pegs. Somewhere in the guest hall, Eleanor is likely arranging badges into proper order. You pause beneath the arch and listen to the scribes behind you, their quills moving like small winter insects in the hush. And you understand, more gently now, that some misunderstood minds do not stand apart because they are empty of feeling, but because the world enters them too sharply, too fully, and must be turned into lines, notches, colours, and careful words before it can be born. The abbey does not keep you long after morning, for travellers are like smoke in a monastery, tolerated when they rise properly, unwelcome when they linger in corners. After a breakfast of coarse bread, thin cheese, and ale so small it seems to apologise for existing. You follow the road with the pilgrims until it divides near a stone cross. Eleanor takes the western way, touching her pebbles as she goes. The old pilgrim raises his badge-covered hat in farewell, and the brown dog considers joining him, then remembers who most recently shared fish skin and returns to your heel. By afternoon, the road climbs toward a low ridge where a manor keep watches over the fields. It is not a great castle of songs, with banners snapping against heroic skies, but a practical stone place with a timber hall, a ditch full of half-frozen water, and a gatehouse that smells of horse, smoke, and old rope. Still, torch brackets line the walls, and men-at-arms lean under the arch, wearing quilted jacks and expressions that suggest laughter must apply for permission. A cart creaks ahead of you, loaded with barrels, onions, and a cage of hens who have clearly reached strong opinions about noble hospitality. One wheel wobbles badly. You think of the cracked cartwheel in the town yard, bound with rope and hope, and wonder if every road in this kingdom has agreed to test wood until it gives up. Inside the gate, servants move with the quick, tired grace of people preparing for a feast. Rushes are being spread over the hall floor, fresh bundles tossed across old stone and sprinkled with lavender, rosemary, and sweet flag. A boy carries trenchers stacked like shields. 2 women polish pewter cups with cloths darkened by use. Near the kitchen door, a cook shouts for more firewood while stirring a pot large enough to baptize a goat. Though this is not recommended by any known church authority, you're not invited as a guest of honor, which is fortunate, because guests of honor must sit where everyone can see them chew. Instead, through the mercy of a steward who mistakes you for someone useful, you're given a place along the lower benches with lesser travellers, household clerks, visiting servants, and a nervous wool merchant who keeps checking whether his purse is still attached to his belt. Evening falls, and the hall becomes too bright. Torches flare along the walls, beeswax candles burn on the high table, cleaner and sweeter than the tallow dips near the lower benches. Firelight leaps against polished cups, knife blades, belt buckles, wet boots, and the eyes of waiting dogs. The rafters drink smoke. Shadows jump. A musician tests a pipe near the screen passage, producing a shrill note that causes the brown dog to hide beneath your bench and several human souls to consider joining it. The Lord enters with his household, and everyone rises. Fur-lined cloaks, embroidered sleeves, rings, veils, bright girdles, and polished leather gather beneath the torchlight. A chaplain blesses the meal, asking grace over bread, meat, ale, salt, and all present. No one can quite agree whether blessings also cover the dogs under the tables, but the dogs behave as if fully included. Then the feast begins. Trenchers are laid down thick slices of stale bread used as plates, ready to soak up juices and become later food for servants, beggars, or animals. Depending on the mercy and hierarchy of the house, platters pass: roast goose, salted beef, pottage rich with leeks, smoked fish, mustard sharp enough to wake a sleeping ancestor. Spiced wine moves along the higher table, while ale travels lower, where expectations are sensibly modest. A servant brings a dish of frumenti, wheat boiled with milk and sweetened with honey, and the smell of it rises warmly through the crush of sharper scents. At first it seems splendid, then it becomes a storm. The music starts, pipe and drum together. Men laugh with mouths full. A cup falls. Dogs bark. A jester near the hearth clatters wooden clappers and makes a joke about a monk, a miller, and a goose, which Brother Martin, somehow present and instantly suspicious, does not appreciate. Servants shout for space. A page trips on the rushes and recovers so quickly that only 3 people notice, which in a hall this crowded counts as privacy. Torch smoke thickens. Grease snaps in the fire. Across from you sits a young woman in a plain blue gown, perhaps a seamstress attached to the household. She keeps both hands flat on the table, fingers spread beside her trencher. Her eyes follow each movement too sharply: the swing of a ladle, the flash of a knife, the twitch of flame, the sudden lean of a laughing man. When the pipe shrills again, her jaw tightens. She does not eat. A woman beside her murmurs, "Meg, take bread." Meg touches the edge of the trencher once, twice, then pulls her hand back when gravy runs toward her fingers. Her breathing turns shallow. She gets like this at feasts, the woman says to no one in particular, in the tone people use when embarrassment has wrapped itself around concern. Too proud for good food, some say, or too much light, says an older servant passing behind you, carrying a jug. She says it plainly, as if naming rain. Some swear that those who cannot bear feasting are ungrateful, ill-bred, cursed by envy, or troubled by an excess of cold humours. Others say certain people are born with thinner veils between themselves and the world, so that sound, smell, touch, and brightness pass through all at once. Those who tell the tale never fully agree, but in the middle of the hall, surrounded by celebration, you see how ordinary joy can become an ordeal when every flame has teeth. A roasted apple is placed before Meg. She does not move. The older servant returns, not with scolding, but with a wooden cup of warm-watered ale and a folded linen cloth. She sets the cloth beside Meg's hand. "Kitchen passage," she says softly. "3 breaths there. Come back if you wish." Meg stands too quickly, then freezes as the bench scrapes. The sound is swallowed by the larger noise, yet she winces. You shift your foot, making space. The dog, perhaps recognizing a fellow sufferer of pipes, slips from beneath the bench and trots after her as far as the passage. No one at the high table notices, or perhaps one person does and says nothing, which can be its own form of mercy. You eat slowly after that. The feast continues around you in waves. A servant scatters more rushes where wine has spilled. Salt is passed with care, because spilling salt is said by some to invite sorrow, quarrels, or the devil's attention, though in a hall full of shouting men and sharp knives, the devil has many easier invitations. A noble boy throws a bone to a greyhound and misses. The greyhound forgives him immediately. Dogs are saints in this regard, if not in table manners. Brother Martin argues with the chaplain about whether a relic displayed near the high table is truly from St. Pancras, or merely a finger bone from someone with excellent timing. The chaplain says faith matters more than certainty. Brother Martin says certainty prevents fraud. Both are correct in ways that make supper longer. After a while, Meg returns. She sits at the edge of the bench, not fully in the crush, with the linen cloth folded under her palms. The older servant places a plain wooden bowl near her, away from the dripping trencher, and fills it with a little frumenti. Meg eats one careful spoonful, then another. The victory is quiet enough to be missed by almost everyone. You see it, and so does the servant, who says nothing at all. The hall roars on, bright and smoky, full of appetite, music, pride, warmth, and too much of everything. Yet beneath the noise, small shelters appear: a folded cloth, a shadowed passage, a quieter bowl, a dog under the bench, a person who notices before judgment hardens. By the time the last platters are cleared, your cloak smells of grease, smoke, ale, and crushed herbs. The torches burn lower, the musicians tire. Laughter softens into yawns. Somewhere beyond the hall, the night waits cold and wide, and you understand that being misunderstood is not always a matter of great cruelty. Sometimes it is simply a feast too bright, a pipe too sharp, a room too full, and no one noticing who is quietly drowning in celebration. You leave the feast hall after the torches have burned low and the noble laughter has softened into the dull murmur of people discovering that too much spiced wine is not, in fact, a sign of wisdom. Servants move through the hall with baskets, gathering bones, trenchers, cups, and the fallen dignity of the evening. The rushes underfoot are crushed flat and fragrant with rosemary, grease, spilled ale, and smoke. Near the kitchen passage, Meg sits for a little while with a plain bowl between her hands, calmer now, the folded linen still beneath her fingers. The brown dog returns to your side, smelling faintly of goose, and looking as though it has personally saved the household from waste. Outside, the night is sharp. The keep rises behind you in dark angles, its upper windows showing small squares of candlelight. A gate guard lifts the bar just enough to let a few late travellers pass into the outer yard, and beyond that, through the ditch and over the rough bridge, waits the forest road. It is not sensible to enter woods at night, which is why several people immediately tell you not to do it, but a charcoal burner says there is a forester's hut less than a mile ahead, with dry straw and a banked fire, and the moon is bright enough to silver the ruts. Medieval advice is often like medieval bread hard, practical, and capable of injuring you if taken the wrong way. So you go. The forest receives you slowly. First the fields narrow, then hedges give way to scattered oaks, then the branches close above, black against the winter sky, and the road becomes a pale strip between trunks. Frost glitters on fallen leaves. Your breath rises before you. The dog walks nearer now, no longer pretending to own everything. Somewhere an owl calls, and the sound falls through the trees like a question no one wants answered. Beside the path, tied to a low branch, hangs a little charm, a twist of red wool, a scrap of parchment, and a bent iron nail. You pause to look. Some swear that iron turns away spirits, fair folk, wandering ghosts, and whatever else waits where church bells cannot easily be heard. Others say red thread catches the eye of evil and tangles it until dawn. No one can quite agree whether such charms truly protect travellers or simply make them feel less alone beneath old trees. Either way, the nail is rusted, the thread is faded, and someone once stood here frightened enough to tie both in place. You walk on, your boots muffled by old leaves. After the noise of the feast, the forest silence is almost too large, yet it is not empty. It creaks, settles, drips, breathes. Ice loosens from a twig and falls with a tiny crack. A fox moves somewhere beyond sight. The wind presses through holly leaves with a dry whisper. You begin to understand why people fill the dark with stories. A mind dislikes a blank space. If it cannot see what waits between the trees, it will place something there, saint. Spirit, wolf, fairy, sin, warning, memory. A little farther along, you catch up to a man carrying a bundle of split wood on his back. He walks with a staff in one hand and a lantern in the other, its horn panes clouded with soot. His hood is pulled low, and a string of rowan berries hangs at his belt, shriveled from winter. He tells you he is bound for the same forester's hut. He also tells you, without being asked, that the hollow near the stream is not a place to linger. Why, you ask? Because cold and curiosity are both poor counsellors. He glances toward the trees. They say a child was taken there. The story comes out in pieces as you walk, years ago, or perhaps not so many years, depending on who tells it. A baby in a nearby village cried whenever bells rang, would not nurse if strangers stood too close, and stared for hours at shadows moving on the wall. The neighbours whispered that it was no ordinary child. Some said changeling, some said elf-touched. Some said the mother had crossed the forest during a full moon and failed to turn her cloak inside out. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the child was harmed, healed, hidden away, or simply grew into a quiet boy who preferred the company of sheep. The woodcutter lowers his voice anyway. My grandmother said the mother loved him fierce. That seems the truest part, you say. He nods. Aye. Grandmothers sometimes keep the useful pieces. The road dips toward the stream. The hollow is there, dark and still, with roots twisting through the bank like old fingers. Someone has placed a small wooden cross beside the water, and at its base lie hazelnuts, a strip of linen, and a child's worn shoe. The shoe is stiff with age, too small for any traveller and too real for comfort. The dog sniffs it, then retreats to your heel. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such places hold memory or whether memory holds them. Perhaps a frightened village once tried to explain a child who cried at bells and disliked touch. Perhaps a mother once brought offerings here, not to fairies, but to hope. Perhaps the tale has changed so often that the truth beneath it is as hidden as roots under snow. You stand in the moonlight and feel how ignorance can become legend, and legend can become a cage. The woodcutter crosses himself, then touches the rowan berries at his belt. Best keep moving. You do. The path climbs, and the air grows cleaner. Through the branches ahead, you see a low orange glow. The forester's hut crouches among the trees, roofed with turf and patched thatch, its doorway covered by a hanging hide. Smoke slips through a hole in the roof. Inside, the room is small enough that warmth has nowhere to hide. A banked fire glows beneath ash. Bundles of hazel rods lean against one wall. A bow hangs from a peg. Dried mushrooms are threaded on string near the rafters. And a pot of thin broth waits beside the hearth, smelling of onions, barley, and something wild that you decide not to question. 2 other travellers are already there, an old woman with a basket of wool and a young shepherd wrapped in a cloak too large for him. The shepherd says little. He sits near the wall, turning a smooth bone button over and over between his fingers. When the woodcutter mentions the hollow, the old woman snorts. Fairies get blamed for everything, she says. Sour milk, lost socks, odd children, husbands wandering home late. The woodcutter grins. And what should husbands be blamed on? Poor raising, she says. The shepherd smiles at the button. Barely. And the room warms around that tiny expression. You settle onto a pile of straw with your cloak drawn close. The dog curls against your side. Outside, the forest keeps its old whispers, but inside there is broth, ember light, damp wool drying, and a charm of rowan above the door. The night does not become harmless. Exactly. Medieval knights rarely sign such agreements, but it becomes softer, held back by fire, company, and the quiet recognition that many fearful stories begin where understanding fails. As sleep draws near, you think of Tom, Elred, Will, Matthew, Meg, Eleanor, and the unnamed child in the hollow. You think of how the world has tried to name them with saints and storms, fairies and humours, blessings and curses. The flames sink lower. The button turns in the shepherd's hand, and beyond the hide door, the forest breathes around the hut, ancient and uncertain, while you rest inside its darkness without needing every shadow to have a monster in it. You wake before full dawn in the forester's hut, with the fire sunk low and the air smelling of ash, damp wool, and barley broth gone cold in the pot. The brown dog is pressed against your side with the confidence of a lord claiming disputed land. Outside, the forest is no longer black, only grey and tangled, each branch drawn thin against a sky that has not yet decided whether to clear or snow. The woodcutter is already stirring. He lifts the hide from the doorway and looks out, sniffing the air as if weather were soup. "Wind's turned," he says. The old woman with the wool basket grunts from beneath her cloak. "My knee told me first." No one can quite agree whether aching knees foretell weather better than clouds. But in villages across the world, knees have enjoyed a long career as prophets. You rise stiffly, brush straw from your cloak, and take a heel of bread offered by the woodcutter. It is hard enough to require negotiation, but dipped into warm ale, it becomes almost kind. The shepherd leaves by a side path, still turning the bone button in his fingers. The old woman goes east. You follow the woodcutter toward the edge of the forest, where the road opens again to fields silvered with frost. By mid-morning, a small abbey appears beyond an orchard, its bell tower low and square, its garden walls sheltering beds of herbs from the worst of the wind. This is not the grand abbey of scribes and pilgrims, but a quieter house, part nuns, part lay sisters, part old stones holding on to prayer. A bell rings for the hour, clear and mild. The sound crosses the frozen beds of sage, leeks, onions, and rue. Near the garden wall, a young woman stands with a basket hooked over one arm and a wax tablet in her hand. She wears a dark wool gown, a linen veil pinned neatly under her chin, and a cloak patched at the hem. She looks perhaps 19 or 20, though her stillness makes her seem older until she moves, and then she seems young again. Her eyes are fixed not on the path or the people passing through the gate, but on the sky. "Snow before night," she says. The lay sister beside her laughs. Agnes says snow if a goose looks left. Agnes does not smile. The geese fed early. The crows are low. The wind came north before prime. The moon had a ring last night. The lay sister's laughter softens into a shrug. Then snow before night. You are allowed into the outer garden to warm your hands near a brazier, while a sister decides whether the guest house has room. The garden is sleeping, but not empty. Straw covers the tender beds. Clay pots are turned upside down. Bundles of dried herbs hang beneath an awning, rosemary for memory, sage for the throat, betony for headaches, fennel for the stomach, and rue for nearly everything people fear but cannot explain. Some swear rue hung above a door keeps away evil spirits, fleas, and troublesome dreams. Others say it mostly keeps away people who dislike the smell. Even now, it is hard to tell which benefit was more valued. Agnes moves through the bed slowly, touching each marker stick, then pressing marks into her wax tablet. She notes where frost lies thickest, where the soil has lifted, where a covering of straw has blown loose. Her fingers are red with cold, yet she does not seem to notice until an older nun takes her hand and folds it around a warmed stone from beside the brazier. "Hands," the nun says. Agnes blinks, as if called back from far away. "Yes, Sister Maud." Sister Maud gives you the look of someone who has seen strangers misunderstand the girl before and is already tired on her behalf. She watches what others miss. She says, "Too much," some say. Agnes kneels near a bed of thyme and adjusts the straw one stem at a time. If the roots freeze, the cough syrup fails by Lent. There is no pride in her voice, only fact. A novice passing with a pail whispers that Agnes knows every bell by sound, every herb by scent, and every bird by its morning cry, but cannot endure the laundry yard when all the women beat linen at once. Another says she does not like to be touched from behind. Another says she once refused to enter the chapel because a candle had been moved from the left side of the altar to the right. These things are spoken with curiosity, irritation, admiration, and the small cruelty of people who have never felt the world arrive too brightly. Some swear Agnes has a gift from St. Scholastica, who is sometimes called upon for storms. Others mutter that a girl who watches stars too closely invites strange thoughts. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether knowledge of weather is wisdom, witchery, or simply the result of standing outside when everyone else is sensibly indoors. At noon, you sit near the garden wall with a wooden bowl of leek broth, coarse bread, and a little smoked fish. The sisters eat plainly. A bell marks the meal. No one speaks for several minutes, and the silence feels different from the forest silence. This one is tended, like a fire kept low. Agnes sits at the end of the bench. Before eating, she turns her bowl so the small crack in the rim faces away from her. Sister Maud notices and turns the cup beside it the same way. No comment, no sermon, just an adjustment as small as breathing. After the meal, a farmer from a nearby holding arrives with worry on his face. His wife is near birthing, he says, and the midwife wants to know whether the road will hold until morning or be lost under snow. He looks first to Sister Maud, then, reluctantly, to Agnes. Agnes stands and walks to the gate. She studies the clouds, the smoke from the abbey chimney, the way frost remains in the cart ruts, the high, restless flight of rooks over the orchard. She closes her eyes while the bell rope creaks in the tower, counting perhaps the time between gusts. Go now, she says. Do not wait for dusk. Take the lower road by the mill. The upper ridge will drift. The farmer shifts. You are sure. Agnes looks uncomfortable with the question, as if certainty is a garment that never fits. No, but the wind has chosen. Sister Maud nods, then go. He goes. All afternoon, the abbey prepares quietly, not in panic, but in obedience to weather. Extra wood is brought under cover. The herb bundles are moved from the awning. A shutter is fastened with a new peg. A novice scatters fresh rushes in the guest room, mixing in lavender and mint. Agnes checks the sky again and again, not because she doubts herself, you think, but because the sky is speaking and she cannot stop listening. Near evening the first snow begins. It arrives as fine white dust over the garden wall, settling on straw, stone, and the dark sleeping beds. Sister Maud says nothing, but she places a hand briefly near Agnes's shoulder without touching it, close enough to be felt as warmth, not surprise. Agnes exhales, long and quiet. The bell rings for vespers. Snow thickens, somewhere on the lower road. You hope the farmer is already well on his way. You stand beneath the cloister arch with the dog at your feet and watch Agnes look upward, her face pale in the dimming light, her mind moving among birds, bells, herbs, stars, and weather signs older than books. And you understand that suspicion and respect can live side by side in the same garden. A village may whisper, a novice may laugh, a farmer may doubt until snow proves him wrong. Yet when winter leans close, everyone turns toward the one who has been listening all along. By morning the snow has taken full possession of the abbey garden. It lies over the herb beds in soft white folds, rounds the wall stones, covers the cart ruts, and rests on the orchard branches as lightly as flour sifted over a dark loaf. The world beyond the gate has gone quiet, not empty, but muffled. Even the bell seems change when it rings for prime, its voice falling into the snow and coming back gentler, as though the weather has wrapped the whole valley in wool. You wake in the guest room beneath a blanket that smells faintly of lanolin, smoke, and many previous winters. The brown dog has found the warmest patch near the wall and appears deeply committed to monastic life, provided no vows interfere with breakfast. A novice brings a bowl of hot pottage, thin but blessedly steaming, and a heel of coarse bread that softens when dipped. Outside the narrow window, Sister Maud crosses the yard with her hood drawn low, leaving dark prints in the snow. Behind her walks Agnes, carrying her wax tablet under her cloak to keep it from stiffening in the cold. No traveller leaves that morning. The road is hidden. The upper ridge drifted just as Agnes warned, and the lower way is passable only for those with urgent business and better boots than sense. So you remain at the abbey, not trapped exactly, but folded into its winter rhythm. Snow days in such places are not days of idleness. They are days when survival becomes a list, and every hand, quiet or talkative, finds its task. After the meal, Sister Maud sends you with 2 lay brothers to the winter storehouse. The door stands beneath a stone arch on the north side of the yard, banded with iron and swollen from damp. One brother carries the key, a great black thing that looks less made than excavated from the bones of the earth. He turns it with both hands, the lock complains, the oak door opens, and cold cellar air rolls out smelling of barrels, salt, apples, straw, smoked fish, old grain, and mouse traps. Inside, this storehouse is dim and orderly. Barrels line one wall ale, cider, vinegar, salted pork, and brine that smells strong enough to frighten sin. Hooks overhead hold smoked fish wrapped in linen, sides of bacon darkened by smoke, strings of onions, garlic, dried mushrooms, and bunches of herbs saved from the warmer months. Sacks of barley and oats sit raised on wooden pallets. A bin of beans rests beneath a cloth. Apples lie in straw. Each one turned so rot cannot pass secretly from fruit to fruit, because even apples, left unsupervised, become political. A lay sister named Beatrice kneels near the apple racks, checking them one by one. She's older, with quick eyes and hands made knobby by cold water, work, and years of refusing nonsense. Beside her sits Agnes, who lifts each apple, turns it, sniffs once, and sets it down in exactly the same place unless she finds a bruise. The bruised ones go into a separate basket for stewing. The rotten ones go out for the pigs. The good ones remain in straw, small moons in a brown sky. "Do not hurry her," Beatrice says to the younger novice, who is already impatient. Rot loves haste. Agnes does not look up. She touches the edge of the rack before each row, 1 touch for the first shelf, 2 for the second, 3 for the third. No one comments. The storehouse accepts this rhythm as easily as it accepts cold. Some swear that apples keep longer if stored with a sprig of rosemary. Others that a silver coin in the bin discourages spoilage, though mice are rarely impressed by currency. No one can quite agree whether such habits preserve food, comfort the keeper, or merely give winter something to argue with. Here, among the barrels and hooks, the difference hardly matters. A sprig is placed, a coin is tucked away, the apples are turned, the work goes on. You help move sacks from one pallet to another while the lay brothers inspect for damp. Grain is wealth here, not in the shining way of coins, but in the deeper way of warm bellies. A careless leak can become hunger by Lent. A torn sack can invite mice, and mice invite cats, and cats invite opinions, especially from monks who think cats distract from prayer while secretly feeding them beneath tables. The brothers mark each sack with chalk after checking it. Beatrice keeps a tally on a notched stick, cutting marks slowly, firmly, making memory visible in wood. Agnes notices a barrel before anyone else does. She stands beside it, head tilted, listening. "What is it?" Beatrice asks. The cider breathes wrong. The younger novice nearly laughs, then sees Beatrice's face and decides against it, a wise spiritual development. The lay brother taps the barrel. Nothing seems amiss. Agnes places her palm near the bung but does not touch it. "There," she says, a little wet. Sure enough, a thin dark line shines beneath the plug, almost hidden in shadow. The brother tightens it with a mallet and wedge, a small thing, hardly worth a story. Yet by spring, that small line might have become a spoiled barrel, and a spoiled barrel might have meant less drink for workers, less vinegar for preserving, less comfort when the cold stretches too long. Survival, you see, often announces itself not with trumpets, but with a girl hearing cider breathe wrong. At midday, you rest near the storehouse door, eating bread, smoked fish, and a piece of hard cheese with a rind like old leather. The dog receives a flake of fish and immediately forgives the entire winter. Snow continues to fall, fine and steady. From somewhere inside the abbey comes the dull scrape of shovels clearing the path between church, kitchen, and well. Bells mark the hours. Each sound gives the day a spine. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether routine is a kind of prayer, a kind of fear, or simply what people do when the world outside becomes too large. But in the storehouse, repetition feels holy in its plainest clothes. Turn the apples, check the sacks, tighten the bung, count the candles, fold the blankets, sweep the rushes, feed the fire before it fails. These are not grand deeds for painted manuscripts. No minstrel will sing of the woman who saved 6 onions from mould. Yet when the snow deepens and the roads vanish, kingdoms shrink to cellars, shelves, barrels, blankets, and hands that remember what to do next. In the afternoon, wool blankets are brought down from aloft and shaken, checked for moths, then folded in careful squares. Agnes folds slowly, matching corner to corner, smoothing the cloth until the edges lie true. The novice, watching now with less impatience, copies her method. Beatrice notices and says nothing, which is often the cleanest praise. Near dusk, the storehouse door is barred again. The great key turns. Outside, the abbey yard is blue with evening. Smoke rises straight from the kitchen roof. Sister Maud stands beneath the cloister arch, looking toward the hidden road. Agnes beside her holds a warmed stone in both hands. The bell rings for vespers, steady as a heartbeat under snow. You follow them inside, carrying the scent of apples, salt, wax, and wool. The dog pads close at your heel. Behind you, the storehouse rests in darkness, packed with patient little salvations. And as the abbey settles into its snowy hush, you understand that some minds survive by making order where others see only chores, by noticing the small leak, the bruised fruit, the wrong breath of a barrel, and by teaching winter, one repeated task at a time, that it has not yet won. By the next morning the snow has thinned to a pale dust drifting from a tired sky, and the abbey begins to loosen itself from stillness. Paths have been cleared between church, kitchen, well, and storehouse. The herb beds sleep under straw. Smoke rises from the bakehouse roof, carrying the warm smell of coarse loaves, and the bell for prime sounds over the yard with a clear, patient note. You stand beneath the cloister arch with your cloak drawn close, Rosemary still tucked inside it. while the brown dog noses at a drift as if searching for buried theology. A rumour arrives before the road fully opens. It comes first with a carter from the lower village, stamping snow from his boots at the gatehouse. He says the town beyond the ridge has uncovered a relic in the wall of its old chapel, a finger bone sealed in a little lead box, wrapped in silk so faded it may once have been red, or blue, or simply very ambitious grey. The chapel priest claims it belongs to St. Bartholomew. A woman from the market swears it healed her brother's trembling hand. A miller says the priest found it conveniently just before roof repairs became expensive. Brother Martin, who's also arrived by some mysterious instinct for suspicion, hears this and looks almost happy. No one trusts a relic discovered during fundraising, he says. Sister Maud gives him a calm look. Many holy things require roofs. Fraud also dislikes rain, he replies. And so, because the road is passable by noon, and because no medieval day is complete without mud, doubt, and a bone in a box, you join the small party walking toward the town. Brother Martin goes to inspect the claim. Sister Maud sends Agnes with him, not to judge the relic, she says, but to observe the crowd and bring back word of the road. You go with them because the path leads toward the walled town from which your journey began, and because curiosity, like cold, finds every gap in a cloak. The road over the ridge is soft underfoot, snow melting into brown slush. The dog trots ahead, then circles back, delighted by everyone's poor balance. Agnes walks near the left side of the track, careful where ice hides beneath cart ruts. She marks things: silently broken branch, deep drift, smoke from a distant cottage bending east. Brother Martin mutters about false relics, false measures, false humility, and possibly false soup, though that last complaint may be hunger. By afternoon, the town wall appears, damp and familiar. The gatekeeper from your first evening recognizes you and lifts his lantern, though daylight remains. Back again. So it seems, you say, relic. Is it relic? He sniffs. My wife says it cured old Peter's shaking. Peter says it was warmer in the chapel than in his house. No one can quite agree whether saints prefer credit or honesty. Inside the gate, the town is alive with talk. The same lanes lean overhead, the same smells of dung, onions, wet wool, and baking bread rise from the thawing street. The broken cartwheel has finally disappeared from the inn yard, though the rope that bound it hangs on a peg, retired with honour. Tom is there by the stable door, brushing the grey mare in 7 calm strokes. He sees Agnes's cloak, Brother Martin's hood, your muddy boots, the dog, the road salt on the hem. Perhaps all of it at once. He does not speak, but his gaze follows the crowd moving toward the chapel. The chapel stands near the market square, older than most of the surrounding houses, its stones darkened by smoke and weather. A line of townspeople waits outside: merchants, servants, widows, apprentices, a soldier with a stiff knee, a mother holding a restless child, and the wool seller who once lifted her stall cloth for Tom. Pilgrim badges already hang near the doorway, some newly bought, some borrowed, some possibly made in a hurry by a craftsman with flexible devotion. Inside, the chapel is warm and close. Rushes cover the floor. Beeswax candles burn near the altar, far more than usual, their sweetness thick in the air. The lead box sits on a linen cloth beneath a painted image of St. Bartholomew, whose face has been retouched recently and now looks surprised by his own popularity. Beside the box lies a narrow strip of faded silk and a small dark bone no longer than a finger joint. People kneel, whisper, cross themselves, touch their foreheads, and leave coins in a dish with the seriousness of those hoping belief may be noticed. Some swear the bone glows at dusk, others say it smells faintly of roses. A boy claims he heard singing near it, though his sister says he hears singing near any place where people might give him attention. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether a miracle begins in heaven, in memory, in need, or in a room full of people repeating what they hope is true. Brother Martin leans close, squinting. The silk is old. The chapel priest brightens. Old silk proves old silk, Brother Martin adds. Agnes stands back near the wall, hands folded around a warmed stone. Her eyes move not to the relic, but to the candles, the line of kneeling bodies, the smoke rising unevenly, the shadows shifting across the painted saint. Tom has slipped in behind the stableman, staying near the door where the air is clearer. When the market bell outside rings, he flinches and presses his shoulder toward the stone wall. Then the trembling man arrives. Old Peter is led forward by his niece. His hands shake visibly, one worse than the other. The crowd hushes, hungry for proof. He kneels before the relic, and the priest touches the lead box to his knuckles while murmuring a prayer. For a few breaths, nothing changes. Then Peter's hand stills. A sigh passes through the chapel like wind over rushes. Miracle, whispers someone. Brother Martin's eyebrows descend into thunder. Agnes tilts her head. Tom, near the door, looks not at Peter's hand but at the candle flame beside him. The flame has stopped flickering. The priest, you realize, has led Peter away from the draught near the open side door and into the warmer stillness by the altar. His shaking hand rests now on the linen-covered rail. His niece holds his elbow firmly. Warmth, support, quiet, expectation, prayer, all of them gather around one old man's body. Even now, it is hard to tell what has happened. Perhaps the saint has touched him. Perhaps warmth has steadied him. Perhaps hope itself has given his muscles one small mercy. Perhaps all these explanations stand together, less like enemies than travellers sharing a narrow bridge. Tom steps forward suddenly, then stops. His lips move. 1, 2, 3, 4. His eyes remain on the candles. Agnes follows his gaze. The glow, she says softly. Brother Martin turns. What glow? Agnes points, not to the bone, but to the polished brass behind it, newly rubbed, catching candlelight and throwing it onto the lead box whenever the door swings open and the flame bends. Tom touches the door latch, waits for the draught, and the little shine appears again, trembling across the relic like a secret. The chapel murmurs, some are disappointed, some relieved, some annoyed that wonder has been made practical. The priest looks wounded, then defensive. Brother Martin looks vindicated in a way that improves nobody's mood. But old Peter, still kneeling, says, "My hand was quiet. No one answers at once." That is the trouble with truth in such places. It does not always arrive alone. The relic may not glow by its own power. The silk may prove nothing. The bone may be holy, doubtful, or merely old. Yet Peter's hand was quiet. The crowd saw it. Tom saw the light's trick. Agnes saw the draught. Brother Martin saw the weakness in the claim. The priest saw coins for the roof. Each mind carries away a different chapel. As you step outside, evening begins to lower over the square. The market stalls are closing. The wool seller wraps her blue skeins. Tom returns to the grey mare, calmer now that the bell has stopped. Agnes watches the smoke bend above the roofs and says snow will not return tonight. You stand beneath the dim sky, hearing the town retell the miracle before it has even cooled. By supper, the relic will have shone brighter. By Lent, old Peter may have been unable to lift a spoon before the saint cured him. Or perhaps the story will change because Tom noticed the brass and Agnes named the draught. Belief, doubt, memory, and unusual perception will tug at it from all sides. The dog leans against your boot. The chapel candles flicker behind you, and you understand that some misunderstood minds do not destroy wonder by seeing clearly. Sometimes they simply clean the window through which wonder is seen. Night gathers gently over the town, not all at once, but by small agreements. First the roofs darken, then the upper windows glow, then the lanes lose their edges, and the market square becomes a place of shuttered stalls, damp boards, and footprints filling slowly with thaw water. The chapel behind you still smells of beeswax and crowded breath. People spill from it in murmuring knots, each carrying a different version of what has just happened. One woman says St. Bartholomew steadied old Peter's hand. A cooper says the brass plate did it. A young apprentice insists the bone shone. Even after Tom showed him the draught, Brother Martin says nothing, which is so unusual that several people look briefly concerned for his health. You walk with Agnes and Sister Maud toward the inn yard, while the brown dog trots ahead, pauses, returns, and makes certain every member of the party remains properly herded. Tom is already there with the grey mare, smoothing her winter coat in 7 strokes along the neck, 7 along the shoulder, 7 along the flank. The stable lantern throws gold over his hands. When the market bell rope creaks in the wind, he glances up, but it does not ring. His breath settles. Agnes stops beside the gatepost and watches him for a moment, not staring, simply noticing with the same calm attention she gives smoke, birds, and weather. The horse trusts him, she says. The horse has sense. Sister Maud replies, "No one can quite agree whether animals know holiness, fear, illness, storms, or the secret weight of a human heart. Some swear a horse can smell a lie, a dog can see a wandering spirit, and a cat can sit on the chest of the sick to draw out fever. Though cats may simply enjoy warmth and authority, still." The mare lowers her head beneath Tom's hand, and the dog sits beside his boot as if appointed witness. The gatekeeper comes down from the arch carrying an iron key and a horn lantern. He speaks with the innkeeper, then with the stableman, then with Brother Martin, because rumour is already running ahead of sleep. The lead box, the trembling hand, the brass glow, the draught from the side door, each detail changes slightly from mouth to mouth. You think of Matthew remembering the oil stain on the old charter, Will recalling debts no miller could erase, Eleanor arranging badges until the road felt straight, Meg finding shelter in the kitchen passage, Elred counting candles after wind, and the unnamed child in the forest hollow, wrapped in a tale too heavy for any cradle. The innkeeper's wife brings out a heel of bread and a cup of warm ale for Tom. She does not ask what he saw in the chapel. She only says, "Clever eyes tonight." Tom accepts the bread. After a pause, he breaks off the smallest piece and gives it to the dog. The dog receives it with the gravity of a bishop accepting tribute, then immediately licks mud from its paw, which restores theological balance. You sit for a while beneath the inn eaves, where the roof drips steadily into a barrel. Inside the hall, rushes are being stirred and fresh herbs scattered over the worst patches. A servant carries a bundle of lavender and sweet flag. A man near the hearth complains that the relic argument has spoiled his appetite, though he is eating while he says this, so the evidence is mixed. The grey mare shifts in her stall. Somewhere beyond the roofs, the church bell marks the late hour. Agnes and Sister Maud prepare to return to the abbey at first light. Brother Martin has taken a place inside and is already questioning the chapel priest's cousin about who polished the brass and when. The gatekeeper bars the town gate for the night with a slow wooden groan. The iron key turns. The sound recalls your first arrival when you entered cold, muddy, and uncertain, following torchlight into a town that judged quickly but also fed strangers, steadied horses, lifted stall cloths, turned bowls, warmed stones, and made room in small imperfect ways. Those who tell the tale never fully agree about minds like these. Some will go on saying moon-touched, fairy-marked, cursed, blessed, stubborn, holy, simple, proud, strange. Some will reach for saints, humours, charms, bells, rowan twigs, red thread, folded prayers, and old explanations with worn edges. Yet you have walked beside enough quiet lives now to feel another truth beneath the words. A mind may be different without being distant. A silence may be full. A repeated touch may be a bridge. A sharp eye may save a horse, a barrel, a roof, a road, a memory, or a town from believing only the easiest version of its own story. Near midnight, you climb once more toward the gatehouse walk, where a small watchfire burns in a brazier behind the parapet. The gatekeeper allows it because you have the look of someone who will not cause trouble before dawn, and because you offer to carry a small bundle of wood. Above the wall, the town lies in dark folds roofs, chimneys, the chapel tower, the inn yard, the stable lantern, the last soft glow where Tom still moves among the horses. Beyond the wall, the road disappears into mist. Somewhere out there are the abbey gardens under snow, the forest hollow with its little cross, the pilgrim road with its badges and shrines, the manor hall with old rushes and sharper judgments, and the village hearth where Will's memory burns brighter than any tally stick. The watchfire settles, sparks rise, then vanish. The gatekeeper says people will still argue about the relic tomorrow. Likely, you say, and next week. Likely. He nods, satisfied by the sturdy shape of human foolishness. After a while, even talk falls away. The town grows quiet enough that you hear horses breathing below, water dripping from the eaves, and the dog turning once in the straw. The final watch before dawn is the softest hour, when fear has tired itself out and daylight has not yet begun making demands. You pull your cloak close. Smoke from the brazier folds around you, warm and thin. The stones beneath your boots hold the night's cold, but your hands are near the embers, and that is enough. The bell sounds once in the darkness, slow and low, then leaves the air trembling. You do not need to name every sorrow correctly to treat it gently. You do not need perfect knowledge to make a room quieter, a bowl plainer, a road more predictable, a hand warmer, a voice softer. The medieval world below you remains rough, muddy, smoky, and full of wrong guesses. But here and there, like candlelight behind shutters, kindness survives in practical forms. Dawn begins as a pale breath beyond the fields, the gate, the wall, the chapel, the stable roof, and the wet road slowly return from shadow. Tom's lantern goes out. Agnes, somewhere below, will be watching the sky. Brother Martin will be preparing a complaint. The dog will be looking for breakfast. And you, wrapped in wool and smoke and the last warmth of the watchfire, let the night loosen its hold. The embers darken softly now. The town grows still again, not empty, only resting. The roofs fade into grey. The river mist drifts low beyond the wall, and the first birds speak in small, careful notes, as if they too are trying not to wake the world too quickly. You breathe in the scent of ash, damp wool, old stone, and distant bread ovens beginning their work. There is nothing more you need to solve tonight. The misunderstood minds you have met remain where they are in stables, gardens, scriptoria, kitchens, roads, halls, and quiet corners, each held by the fragile mercy of being noticed. So you let the road fade, you let the bell soften, you let the names blur into warmth: Tom, Aelred, Will, Matthew, Meg, Eleanor, Agnes, and all the others whose ways were not always understood, but were still real, still human, still worthy of gentleness. The watchfire becomes a red bead in the dark. Your hands grow heavy. Your breathing slows. The medieval town folds itself into silence, and you may rest now, safe beside the last glow, while morning waits politely at the edge of sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.